Hey everyone, in today's lesson, we are going to be talking about tips for answering comprehension questions. One of the most challenging things for students is to effectively write answers for comprehension questions. Today's lesson will provide you with some tips that would help you to better answer comprehension questions on your comprehension tests. So, one of the first things you want to do is to read the questions before reading the passage. Now, you do this because you want to ensure that you set a purpose for reading. All right? Reading the questions before answering the passage also helps you to locate information beforehand. So you begin to identify, you begin to look for the answers to your questions. Next, you want to make sure that you understand the passage. So right off the bat, even as you begin to read, ensure that you understand the passage, because if you do not understand the passage, you would not be able to answer the questions effectively. Also, you want to read your questions carefully. All right, now, and to read your questions carefully, you may need to reread the questions up to about 3 times. Now, I have had experiences where students read the questions and they just check you to say, Miss, I did not understand. And I have to say to them, go back and read it again. And I would say, go back and read it a 3rd time. And then they would say, Miss, I got it now. So it just shows that if you do not read the questions carefully, you would not understand what you have to do. Let's move on. You also want to ensure that you underline keywords in the text or you underline keywords in the question. So there are keywords in the questions that you may want to make a note of. Underline what the question is asking you to do. There are some important words there also that you may need to pay attention to. The question must say, identify 5 reasons why, or which of the following is not, or all of the following is a reason except. Now, these keywords can throw us off, and so we need to pay attention to those keywords that can throw you off when answering your questions. Read the question carefully, underline keywords if possible. Next, identify how many parts the question has. So some questions have 2 parts, but if we do not read carefully, if we are not aware, we may answer just one part of the question, and so we would lose marks on those questions. Identify how many parts your questions have. You may also want to identify the type of question that is being asked. Now, we know that there are different types of questions. We have right there questions, think and search questions, author and me questions, on my own questions. Now, if it's a right there question, it does not require any sort of thinking. The answer is just there in your passage, right there. Think and search, if it's a think and search, you have to think about the question, and the answers may be found in different parts of the text. Identify the type of question. You may also have an author and me question. In this case, you may have to use information from the passage, and you would also need to have additional background information from your experience on that question. So the answer to an author and me question is not directly in the text. While the information is in the text, you may have to use other information to help to come up with an effective answer. Finally, you have the on my own questions. These answers would not be found in the passage. These answers come from your experience, they come from your head, and so you would not be able to rely on the information in the text to answer these questions. So let's continue. Tips for answering comprehension questions. Identify how many marks the question is worth. Very important. Now, if a question is worth 5 marks, you cannot expect to write one sentence to get 5 marks. So if a question is worth between 5 to 8 marks, you need to write at least a paragraph long, at least 8 lines long. If a question is worth 1 mark, you answer the question in 1 line. So look at the number of, or look at the points that are going to be awarded for your questions. That would give you an idea as to how many sentences or the number of words you may need to include in your answer. Now, in the case where your answer requires more than a paragraph long, you are required, or you can write or use examples to bring out your point. So if you just, let's suppose you're stuck on your answer, you can use an example that will help to add details to your answer, and you can bring out your point more effectively. All right. The next tip I want to share is that you can use a format to answer the question. So you want to use a format. Your question should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So use a format to answer your comprehension questions. All right. I'll show you what that is after we're finished. And finally, after you answer your question, of course, you may want to review your answer. Make sure that your answer is worth the number of marks that's going to be awarded. Make sure that it's well structured. Make sure that it's clear and it is not confusing. Make sure that your answer flows. Okay? So let's move over to look at the format of your question. So a good answer should contain the following: a beginning or an opening line, a middle, which is well organized, transition words such as first, next, then, in addition, and you can also give examples to support your points. A good answer should also have an ending where you summarize your main points. Okay? So I trust that these tips can be helpful in going forward so that you can gain maximum points on your comprehension tests. Thank you so much.